Ladies and gentlemen, if you can hear me, clap your hands. All right, thank you very much. We got some good students at the front. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get it started in some time. If you need to use a restroom, if you want to find your seat, if you want to close your bill, go ahead and move forward in that direction. And once it's time to get started, you will know. All right. And if you're still standing on the side, you can go ahead and head towards your seat now.
All right, can I have everyone's attention, please? Thank you guys so much for coming. We're very excited about this opportunity. My name is Brock, and we're with the Cartier Family YouTube channel.
My name is Brvndon, and we've been growing our channel for 6 years. And over those 6 years, we've grown up to 2 million subscribers. In the past few years specifically, we've been focusing a lot on politics, and we've become big fans and even friends with Byron.
Yes. We're known for, if you guys have seen us before, we're known for very, very honest and raw conversations. So it tends to get us in trouble sometimes, but a lot of people like it. So we've got to interview Byron in the past. It was a really cool conversation, great conversation. But today we want to get a little bit deeper, a little bit more raw. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the future governor of Florida, Brvndon.
What's going on?
All right, Byron, we're glad to be with you today. So we're joined with a lot of your supporters. We've got a live stream going. We've got some people who may be undecided and may not be on your side. So you're running for governor of Florida. Why don't you tell us why?
We're the best state in the country, number one. And we have term limits in Florida. We need a new governor. The next governor of Florida is going to have to manage several things. Number one, what are we going to do with growth in our state? How are we going to manage it? How do we make sure that people who have built a dream in Florida can afford that dream going forward in Florida? What's the path for young kids for them to get their start in our state? How do you balance agriculture and all of the key interests that Florida still provides to this day? Most people don't know we grow food for half the country right out of Florida. And so you have to balance all of that with also the realities that the federal government is going to have some other issues. They can't fund everything like they've been doing in the past. So you're going to need somebody who knows federal policy, knows state policy, but also has an economics and business background. That's my career. I spent 17 years in the finance world, couple that with my legislative experience on Capitol Hill and in Tallahassee. And so when I looked at the race, I said, why not me? And so we're going to run hard. It's really about making sure the Florida, hold on, there we go. It's all about making sure the Florida dream's alive and well for everybody. And that's what we're focused on. That's why I'm running for governor. We're really excited. 38 days until the primary, and things are going well.
Yes, sir.
Nice. Okay, so with people in our demographic, younger people who just graduated college and are focused on starting a family like yourself and providing for that family, affordability seems to be the number one issue for younger people. So for the people in Florida, if they vote for you, what are you going to do to make Florida more affordable?
Well, first, affordability matters to young people, but it also matters to our seniors as well. It matters to families who are living, paycheck to paycheck, working hard every day. What government can control is a couple of things. Number one, let's talk insurance. Property insurance in our state has risen dramatically over the last 5 to 6 years. That impacts you if you're a homeowner. It impacts you if you're a renter. Either way, it's impacting you. One of the things in Florida that we've not done, and Governor DeSantis has done a lot of great things to help to bring more insurance carriers into the state, and we're going to keep all that stuff in place. But the thing that has not been done yet is reforming the regulatory framework of Florida's insurance market. We have a cat fund in Florida, and I don't want to get too technical, but it's essentially a $17 billion threshold for what happens when disaster strikes and we get a Cat 5 hurricane, Cat 4 hurricane through our state. That cat fund helps to stabilize our insurance market, but we haven't changed the regulations in almost 25 years. We have to readjust that regulatory system. I believe by doing that, we can push insurance rates down 20% in the state of Florida. That's real money in the hands of homeowners when they go and pay their mortgage every single month. That's real money in the hands of renters because those property insurance costs are lower for people who own apartment complexes, et cetera. And typically what always happens, if the cost for carrying an apartment complex is lower, the rent can be cheaper. And so those are the things we want to do around affordability. It's also about government operations. If you're going to permit a new house in the state of Florida, 30% of that cost is government. 30% of the cost. National Association of Home Builders came out with this study. You permit the new house in the United States of America, 30% of the cost is government. So what we have to do is look at our process and find ways to make the permitting timeline shorter and more cost efficient for the people who are building homes. Because let's dispense with all the nonsense and get real. When a developer or a contractor is building a new house, or they're building a new shopping center, or they're building a new road, they're not paying the costs. Who pays the cost is the end user. The developer is a profit margin business. A contractor is a profit margin business. All they're gonna do is take whatever it costs and move it on. When government has long permitting timelines and high permitting costs, all that's doing is adding the cost to the end user that's gonna use it. So my proposal is modernizing permitting and planning in our state, shrinking those timelines, making sure stuff gets built more efficiently, so that way the cost structure is lower for the end user, whether that's a homeowner, a renter, a small business owner. If you can get government costs out of the system and take that away from what it takes to finish a construction project, you can also lower costs over the long term.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. So we're sitting here at an event. I assume that most of the people in here are supporters of Brvndon's. We have a live stream going. What would you say what would be a pitch that you would give to people who may be undecided or on the fence about voting for Brvndon's?
The number one thing you want in a governor, or frankly any elected official, is somebody who takes the time to study these issues and really understand them. Just talking about affordability, like I've heard a lot of talking points from a lot of people talking about it. I've never heard somebody get into the details of how government policy actually impacts the cost of product or housing. So that's number one. Number two, my career was in the real world. I spent 17 years in the finance world, 5 years in commercial banking, starting as a credit analyst, ended up running the entire department by the time I left my bank. I spent 7 years in insurance, 5.5 years in financial services. I'm securities licensed 7 and 66. There's nobody else running for governor in Florida that has a business background. And if you're gonna talk about affordability, you're gonna talk about insurance, you're gonna talk about planning for the future of our state, power generation, water needs for the future, you need somebody who has practical applications in business and economics. In short, the next governor can't wait for a staffer to tell him what this means for a water project or what that means for a road project. The next governor can't wait for a lobbyist to tell them how an industry works. The next governor needs to be able to talk with business owners, and while we're having a conversation about their business model, understanding the dynamics of how that business operates, how that industry operates, so that the governor is making the best decisions on behalf of the state of Florida. I have that experience, not just in government, but in the private sector, the way nobody else running for governor has.
Very nice.
Wow. Okay. So on that affordability point, I remember last time we got to sit down with you and Wesley, we talked a little bit about your upbringing and how you came from a single parent home in New York, you know, and you didn't have a silver spoon in your mouth at all. So how did that upbringing shape your views and how you plan on running Florida?
The first thing is you take nothing for granted. Honestly, I'm blessed to be here. I was telling my wife and my team the other day, kind of the motto in the campaign as we go down the stretch is, man, I'm just too blessed to be stressed. Too blessed. I'm a blessed man. Life has worked out for me and for my wife. We really built the Florida dream for ourselves and with our kids, but nothing was given to us. My wife, when she graduated college, she had an accounting degree. She was a staff accountant at an investment firm, and then she was working Kelly Services on the weekends, just picking up hours to make ends meet. I was still waiting tables at Cracker Barrel before I even started working in banking, and on the weekend, I was moving furniture in the hotels on Sanibel Island just to make ends meet. So where a lot of young people are starting out today, been there, done that, lived that. I know that. And that's really from my upbringing with my mom. My mom, she did everything for me. I watched her sacrifice. She put me in a position to be successful. The success that I've been blessed with to have in my life is on her shoulders. And now that I'm a father, looking at our 3 sons, and I look at them, I don't want my sons to be me. I want my sons to be better than me. My wife, she wants our sons to be better than her. We want them to build their successes off of our shoulders. So when I reflect on my upbringing, yeah, we didn't have much of anything. My mom was a school choice mom before school choice was a thing, because she believed in her son and she wanted her son to exceed. She wanted her son to achieve. She wanted her son to excel. And so I always keep that in the back of my mind. So now that we're in this campaign, and by the way, the polling looks great, man. It's going very well. We're doing great. But we're in this campaign. It doesn't matter how good it goes or how bad it goes. I stay focused on the fact that, number one, I'm a blessed man in a position I never thought I'd be in my life. Number two, every decision I make is really thinking about the next kid in a single parent household growing up in Florida, or the next kid who's going to high school somewhere else that wants to go to FSU or the University of Florida or University of Miami, and how are they gonna be able to build that Florida dream for themselves? And the last thing I've been thinking about more and more is not just the kids who are going to college, but what about the kids in high school that are gonna go into the workforce? Do they have the skills? Do they have the on-the-job training or the apprenticeships to say, you know what, I'm not going to college, but I have this skill set. I'm gonna go directly into the workforce, and they have an ability to build that dream for themselves. And those are the things that I think about today. That's where my upbringing, I think, has really helped me to be prepared to lead this state, because you wanna make sure that our economy and all the greatness of Florida, that can be moved, that can be distilled for everybody. We wanna make sure everybody has that opportunity, and I'm excited at having this chance to lead our state into the future so that all these kids can have that same opportunity that I was blessed to have.
That was amazing, man. I love the way a lot of that sounds. And to piggyback off of that point you said, to give Americans the Florida dream and to give them the opportunity, a big issue with a lot of young Americans, especially people graduating college, is the H-1B visas. I know you yourself have called the H-1Bs a scam and said they should be done away with. Do you have a plan for Florida and young Americans to put Americans and American workers first so they can get the American and Florida dream?
100%. So let me talk H-1Bs first. They are a scam. They've been abused for a long, long time. One of the reasons why we have such problems in immigration is you cannot get real immigration and visa reform through the United States Senate because of the Senate filibuster. I don't want to go down the whole road of the Senate filibuster. We see what's going on right now with the Save America Act. But I just want people to understand, when you're talking about immigration visas, that's Washington. And the reason why it's so hard to get those changes is because, in short, you're not getting Senate Democrats who are agreeing to do what's right on behalf of making sure that the immigration system in the United States puts the American people first and puts our country first. They want an immigration system that actually provides more value to foreign nationals than to the people in the United States. And I think it's wrong. There's a long time it needs to be changed. H-1Bs need to go, but that's the tip of the iceberg. There's so many reforms that need to happen in the visa system in the United States. I think if you're talking about Florida, how do we make sure that a kid who grows up in Fort Lauderdale, a kid that grows up in Seminole Heights in Tampa, a kid that's growing up in Jacksonville, a kid that's growing up in Overtown in Miami, or a kid that grows up in Naples, Florida, where I live, in Collier County, Florida, or any other part in our state. It starts first with making sure that that young kid is reading on grade level, doing math on grade level by the third grade. The data is clear. A kid that falls behind at the third grade almost never catches up. Almost never catches up. Because think about it for a moment. Third grade reading, third grade math, you're 2 years away from going into the 6th grade, because you're now done with 5th grade. In our school system, for far too long, we're moving kids along, not making sure kids are mastering at each grade level. We see in the data that at the 7th grade, that's where you have this divergence in kids. That's where at-risk kids really come into the forefront, is in the 7th grade. Why? There's no more after-school programs when you get into the 7th grade. So now you have a kid who's not reading on grade level, not doing math on grade level. There's no more after-school programs. So what's now happened with that kid? That kid's not engaged where there's a mentor or a tutor, and so they're starting to fall off. That's why 3rd grade reading and 3rd grade math are critical. We want to make sure that our kids just aren't at grade level by that time, but they're mastering reading and mathematics by that time. We want to make sure that kids in Florida are mastering subject matter at each grade level so that they master it by the time they graduate high school. Because a young kid who can read up at grade level and master at grade level at every step through their high school career is somebody that can walk into any office, onto any job, and be able to understand what's going on, and they have skill sets to be economically viable. Mathematics is also key to that. In Florida, I asked the chancellor of education, of our university system, I said to him, can we double the amount of engineering degrees in Florida? And you know what he said to me? He said, Byron, we could do that tomorrow. But the problem is we don't have enough kids who will have the high-level math skills coming out of Florida high schools. So coming out of Florida high schools, we don't have enough kids with high-level math skills to double the amount of engineering slots coming out of our university system. So that's why I'm so focused on making sure we're mastering math, reading, and writing by the time our kids graduate high school. Yes, in middle school, we want to start helping parents help parents and their kids have personalized success plans. Why is that? First of all, I have 3 sons, 22, 15, 18. They're all different. They all needed different things. If my wife was up here, she would go through in detail all the differences between our sons. There are no 2 children who are alike, but we operate in the education system thinking that every kid just needs the same things, and that's just not true. So we want to see personalized success plans for the children of Florida. Today, if a kid has special needs, or if a kid has fallen behind academically, they get what's called an IEP, an individual education plan. So they get a specific plan of how to help them get back on track, or to give them the whatever trainings or whatever therapies they need to help them get through the education experience. Well, what about the rest of our children? What about the rest of the kids who may not be an athlete or who may not be in the arts and in drama? I watched my sons. My sons, they did very well academically, all of them, but they also played a lot of sports. I coached them in a lot of sports. So with our athletes, what we know, they have obviously classroom instruction, but they have mentors in their team. They're in the gym, they're in the weight room, they're on the field, they're on the court. They play games. There's literally a mentorship around those kids that are athletes. Our kids that are in the arts, yeah, they're in class, but when they don't just go show up on stage, they have rehearsals, dress rehearsals. They go and read the scripts. They master and understand their lines. They try to get the timing down on their lines. They're building a confidence to be on stage and be in front of people. The same way our athletes are building a confidence to be out on the field. But that's only a fraction of the kids that go through our education system. What about the rest? And so that's why I believe in personalized success plans. We want to make sure that each child has a plan for themselves, working with their parents and working with their teachers so they know which way they're going. We have to start finding out what is the purpose and the success and the strength in each child. You have personal strengths in life. So do you. So do I. So does everybody in this room. The question is, in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, are we helping young kids understanding what their personal strengths are? We do that, now you have a pathway of saying, you know what? You're really good at this. You could be a salesman. You could be an architect. You actually might be excellent in the trades. You might be great in healthcare. And then you help a child understand, okay, in 9th grade, here's what you should be doing. In 10th grade, we want you to talk to these companies. In 11th grade, and this is where our Launchpad initiative comes in, we want you to get an internship. You might be in the classroom 4 days a week. That 5th day, you're with a company in your community that wants to help you and train you. Senior year of high school, you might only be in the classroom 3 days. If you're not going to the university system or the college system, then why are you in the classroom for 5 days? You might only be in there 3 days. Those other 2 days, you're getting your internship and apprenticeship on, and you're working with that company. So when you graduate high school, you're not just graduating with a diploma and no plan. You're graduating with a diploma and an opportunity to be economically viable, put food on the table for yourself, and start building that Florida dream. Oh, yeah. That's my vision for education in the future of Florida. I think we do this right. We have a world-class K-12 education system. So to your core question, that's how we deal with the affordability issues, is people having skill sets to put money on the table. That's how we deal with purpose, where people are focused and actually have a path for themselves. That's how you build that American dream. And that's how our kids, quite frankly, to the job market and to the economy, that is how they are prepared for the future, so that the terrible pieces of America's immigration system makes them more valuable than anybody who's coming in from another country. That's what we got to do.
Sir, that's a great
that makes
answer.
a lot of sense.
That was excellent.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's clear that you have a great plan for affordability, a great plan for education, but I have a question that's a little bit different and a little bit deeper than both of those things, I believe, when it comes to the success of a person, and that is faith and Christianity.
Yep.
You've been very open about your faith. I'm a Christian. The Cartier family, we're all Christians. And this is a Christian nation. And I think that we're starting to lose that identity a little bit with a lot of the people we're electing, like Mondami in New York and things like that. So how has faith played a role for you in your life and for how you'll run Florida? And what do you think about America losing that Christian value identity?
I mean, this is a big one. I mean, faith has been everything in my life. You know, I've made a lot of mistakes when I was 18 and 20, a lot of them. And it was, quite frankly, it was my girlfriend at the time, Erica Lees, who's now Erica Donalds, who helped me in my walk, in my pathway to Christ. And what it did for me, it helped me first to understand, like, foundationally, how should I be comporting myself? Like, I didn't grow up with my dad. I'm not blaming that on him. I'm not blaming that on my mom. I made poor choices. But actually going to church and starting to listen to about the things of God and what God has for you, it helped me reflect on myself and look myself in the mirror and say, okay, here's the type of person that you need to be. It's been critical for this trajectory that's happened in my life. I think for all people, our society, our country, only really functions with a good and moral people. And that morality has always been found in Judeo-Christian values. That's where it's found. Everything from the covenant of God's covenant with Abram, before you get to Abraham, God's covenant with Abram, and then he became Abraham, to the 10 Commandments, to King David, to Christ dying on the cross and his resurrection. That foundation, that moral foundation, is the moral foundation that has allowed America to be the most successful republic in the history of the world. And that's not proselytizing, that's just acknowledging the realities and the facts. I think for young people today, I think a lot of young people are searching. And I think the number one thing that young people are searching for, especially in the world of social media, where they can see everything at a moment's notice, where everything is available to them. I say young people have the most customizable life in the history of the planet. Young kids don't even want to drive anymore. They just say, Uber's coming to get me. I don't want to cook. DoorDash dropped it at my door. I don't want to watch commercials. I'm on YouTube. I'm watching just whatever I want at a moment's notice. Or it's Netflix, or it's Amazon Prime, or whatever the case might be. Their entire lives are customizable. And in some respect, when everything is easy, then it's hard to find purpose. Purpose is the defining characteristic of the human condition. If you can find purpose, you can adjust a lot of things in life. If you can find purpose, you have the driver that gets you up every single day. If you can find purpose, that's the thing that actually connects communities and connects people. That's the thing that helps build families, is purpose. You know, what I want for young men in this country is to be driven by purpose. And because I will tell every young man watching, the most attractive thing to a woman that you will ever find is not your clothes, it's not your cologne, it's not your haircut, it's purpose. Because a purpose-driven man is attractive to a woman. Because a woman wants to find a purpose-driven man to say, you know what, I'm a bet on him. And so I think for young people in America today, it's about finding your strengths, finding your purpose, and chasing that to, quite frankly, to the elimination of other things. And foundational faith in God helps you understand your purpose quicker than anything else. Because if you're not looking to the Almighty, then all you're doing is looking to your friends. And so half the time, especially in your friend cohort, man, your friends don't know what they're doing. They're in the same boat you are. That's why you're friends. You know, so like they don't even know. You're in the same boat. You're trying to get the same things accomplished. Everybody's trying to figure out life. But it's when you put your eyes on him, it actually starts to clarify a lot of things in your life. That's what happened for me. That, my wife, and my kids. Like getting married and having kids, man, kids have a way of clearing out a lot of the distractions. It's a beautiful thing. So I would stress this. And I know I talked a lot about young men, not young women, because I believe that society, Western civilization, is predicated on male leadership in homes. If men are leading, women gonna be right there. If men aren't leading, We've already seen what's happened in our country when men don't lead.
Yes, sir. Oh, that was a great answer. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I've got 2 questions.
All right, go ahead.
One of them is predicated or focused on something you said earlier. You said that Florida wants a governor that prioritizes agriculture. We're moving in a futuristic way where tech is very focused on heavily in America right now. One of the biggest things is AI data centers.
Yeah.
They're being put in big agricultural areas, destroying the environment in some places. And I've seen where that's become a concern for a lot of people in Florida. Do you have a plan as governor to address that concern?
Yes, we do. I mean, a couple things. Number one, this fight between ag and our environment and industry and tech, that's a fight when you don't have a strategy for how you balance. In life, everything requires balance. If you don't have balance, and that's why you're constantly fighting to and fro. We need agriculture. It's critical not just to Florida, but to the United States of America, because people have to eat. Without food, you create another whole subset of problems. Forget AI and everything else. Without food and without water and power, quite frankly, we got major problems. So we need agriculture. We are going to protect agriculture in Florida. How you do that is through, I believe, regional growth management plans. We have to know what Florida is going to look like over the next 30 years, over the next 20 years, over the next 10 years. And I believe working with local governments, we can set up regional growth plans. Now, why I say regional is because Florida, although we are a state and we're 23.5 million people, you travel Florida, we're really like 7 states in one. Like if we were ancient Greece, we would have all these city-states. You have Sparta over here, and then, you know, that's what Florida kind of is. Right now, we're in South Florida, Lauderdale. That's very different than the Panhandle, very different than the Tampa Bay region, very different than Duval and Northeast Florida, very different than Southwest Florida, and then you got the heartland. So when it comes to AI data centers, it's number one about making sure that the utility rates for Floridians do not go up if one is built. And by the way, that's the law today in Florida. Governor DeSantis just signed it. It is the law effective July 1, 2026. We are going to keep that law in place. The second thing you do, they have to get a consumptive use permit from the Water Management District. That's the law today in Florida. Same bill that Governor DeSantis signed into law. We're going to keep that. So already right there, we're taking care of water resources and we're making sure utility rates don't go up. That's how you balance the two. If a landowner decides to take their land and develop it, well, we believe in property rights in our state. Property rights are the foundation of America. So you can't go and tell somebody else what they can and can't do with their property. I know it sounds good on social media. People want to say, oh, I stopped this thing from being built. But the truth is, if I can tell you what you can do with your land, then I can tell you anything. And that's not the type of country that we are based upon. We are a country based upon individual liberty, personal property rights, personal freedom protections, freedom of speech, etc. And to be honest with you, you don't want a governor who has the power to just tell you what you can and can't do with your land. You don't want that because, quite frankly, that's what the Democrats like. I know they like to say no kings, but they like that kind of stuff. Anyway.
They do.
So that's the thing. I think you balance the two. You say, all right, if somebody's going to build it on their property, protect water, protect and make sure people's power rates don't go up. The other thing, don't put it next to somebody's house. This is what happened in Northern Virginia. So a lot of the YouTube videos are out of Northern Virginia where they were building them up right next to some apartment complex. I don't want that. I'm gonna tell you right now, Mrs. Donalds does not want to see a data center right next to her house. I don't want to see that for anybody. But when you travel the state, you understand that you can actually set them back away from residential neighborhoods. So you protect the beauty of Florida still. You set them away from residential neighborhoods. And you go from there. Hyperscale data centers that are being talked about today in terms of square footage is about 5 million square feet at full completion. And when people hear that, they go, oh my gosh, 5 million square feet. Anybody been to a big mall? A big super mall is 5,000 square feet. The Aventura Mall, not too far from here, the Aventura Mall is around 5 million square feet. So I think we need to think about these things clearly about what it actually means, what it does to the environment. The new designs for data centers actually use less water than golf courses in Florida use. Golf courses use more water. Wow. So again, what I try to do is just bring the facts to the situation, understanding, yes, we have a plan for how we mitigate that. Are some going to be built? Let's just end the suspense. Yes, some are going to be built because you cannot dictate what somebody's going to do with their land. However, state law is going to make sure that utility rates do not go up, and state law is going to make sure that we take care of our water and our aquifer because our environment is critical to everything that Florida does. We are going to protect Florida's environment.
Yes, sir. Yeah, no, agriculture is huge here. Like you said, it's different in every part of the state. I know a lot of native Floridians want to protect that and keep that intact. So that's a great plan. It sounds amazing. My second question is, you're on the cusp of history. I mean, you're running to be the first black governor of Florida ever. And we as black men know it's a bit taboo to be a Republican and be black, you know? And back in the day, black people used to be Republican, but over the last 60 some odd years, that's kind of changed. So my question here is, what would be your plan to reach those voters who may be on the fence because you are a black Republican? Because I spoke with the man in the crowd and he said, you can't win South Florida without the black vote.
That's true. Well, actually, that's not totally true. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. More black people, and especially black men, are voting Republican.
Yes, sir.
That's happening. We saw it happen in 2024 with President Trump. We saw it happen in 2022 with Governor DeSantis. So that's happening. I think in terms of, I don't get into the history.
Yes, sir.
I try to stay away from the history. I try to stay focused on the people of Florida, because at the end of the day, white or black or Hispanic, man, woman, it's about what are you going to do about the key questions facing our state. And we've talked about a bunch of them. That's the stuff that people care about. That's what I stay focused on. In terms of how do we reach black voters, whether it's South Florida, Orlando, Tampa, Jacksonville area, and all parts in between, I believe in engaging communities. I was in Jacksonville about 6 or 7 months ago, and I had a meeting with about 25 pastors, black pastors in Jacksonville. I had another meeting similar in Orlando. We're going to be doing those same meetings down here in South Florida. I think it's about engaging every voter and every voting bloc and just taking to them your ideas about how your policy and your vision will make Florida a better state moving into the future for everybody. And I believe if you do that with detail and with confidence, I think people will say, you know what, man, I might be, you know, they might say I'm a different party, man, but I like Byron.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna support him. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, here's what's really happening in politics. The parties are starting to matter less and less. People want answers to the things that are happening in their lives today, and they want solutions. But the number one thing they want before any of that, they want the Florida dream to be alive and well. People in our state, regardless of party, they love Florida. They love that we have safe streets. They love we have clean streets. They love that their kids can go to school and get educated. They love that our economy continues to grow. We just went over from being the 15th largest economy in the world to the 14th largest economy in the world. It just happened the other day. We're on our way to being the 10th largest economy in the world. We're going to be launching 1,000 rockets out of Cape Canaveral in a couple of years. With that's going to come manufacturing, tech jobs, defense jobs. We're building drones in the Panhandle. There's so many things that are happening in our state, and I think regardless of politics, regardless of party, people want that. What they don't want is New York. What they don't want is California. What they don't want is Illinois. And that's not politics. That's not party. That's the movement of feet. Milton, I say it all the time, Milton Friedman, Nobel Prize winner in economics, he said you can judge public policy by the movement of feet. The people of America have already talked. The verdict is in. They are choosing Florida, they are choosing Texas, they are choosing Tennessee, because we are common sense states based upon law and order, conservative values, and thriving economies. And that's what people want. And as the state's next governor, that's what we're going to deliver.
Yes, sir.
Nice.
Man, that sounds amazing.
Okay. I have one last question that I think every person cares a lot about, especially men, because as men, the Bible calls us to protect our families and make sure that our families are safe. So in these bigger cities where you see more crime than in suburban cities, what are you going to do to lower that crime in those cities?
It's law and order. You back the blue. You back the blue. When I grew up in New York City as a young kid, I went through 3 mayors. I had Ed Koch, I had David Dinkins, and I had Rudy Giuliani. Ed was not very good on criminal justice and law and order. David Dinkins was terrible at it. And then came Rudy Giuliani. And when Rudy Giuliani came in, he made sure that officers were walking to the beat and he had their back. Our communities were safer. I grew up in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. Our community was safer when Rudy Giuliani took over as mayor. It's just a fact. So in Florida, and I was with our police chiefs the other day, and I told them directly, they will have whatever they need from me. Our sheriffs, they will have whatever they need from me. Our state attorneys, they will have whatever they need from me. Because if you have a standard of law and order and you uphold the law, then everybody knows what the deal is. It's when you're wishy-washy and you start making exceptions and excuses, that's when things go bad. We're not gonna do that. There is a firm standard in Florida around law and order. Governor Scott had that standard, Governor DeSantis has had that standard, and Governor Donalds is gonna have that standard.
Excellent.
That's phenomenal. Yes, sir.
All right, so I think we're going to open up for Q&A. So if you guys have questions for Byron, go ahead, fire away.
What's up, Byron? Good to see you.
It's good seeing you, man. You doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm blessed. So the AI data center question,
Yeah.
right? More than just data centers, right? Because data centers been around for forever. If you use Instagram, you use your iPhone, you're using a data center. So that's not something new. The thing that really troubles me as a tech person, someone that grew up coding and learning technology, the thing that really troubles me is government surveillance. It's like these flock cameras everywhere and basically being guilty until proven innocent, right? The flock cameras are now being installed not only in Florida, all across the country, and they're recording everyone's license plates.
Right.
And now, racial profiling, you've seen that all across the country. You're driving down the wrong street at the wrong time, and you're having mistaken identity issues because your license plate is having the picture taken. So I guess what's your stance more on, the government surveillance, the flock cameras? I know that the police officers are saying that they use it as a tool and it's useful, but how do we, navigate that dangerous, slippery slope between losing our right to privacy and keeping our streets safe?
I think your question really at its core is how do we protect the Fourth Amendment in our streets? And listen, we want to make sure law enforcement has the tools that they need to keep us safe. But the hard and firm line is the Fourth Amendment. Because in our system of government, you have your rights. They cannot be taken from you. They cannot be abridged just because we want to have more safety. I have a real issue with flock cameras. I really, really do. I'm very concerned. What I want to do is make sure that we don't start setting up surveillance states, quote unquote, in Florida. How do we do that? In my opinion, there has to be a very high bar for misuse of any system that's in operation. I think there have to be criminal penalties for misuse. I think there have to be large fines for misuse. The barriers the law has to be so stringent that anybody who wants to misuse the system will think twice. They'll be like, man, I don't want 5 years in prison and a $500,000 fine per occurrence, because I don't want that to happen in my life. I think that's key. I think number two, we've already had cameras. The flock cameras are a whole new situation. I actually think we need to take a full pause at this and relook at this whole system, because you gotta protect the constitutional rights of people in their persons, in their possessions. You gotta protect that. And you cannot have a situation where the government now has active abilities to watch your every movement. I never have agreed with that. I agree with law and order 100%. We have real-time crime centers that passively have cameras that are operating in intersections. That's been happening in Florida for years, I wanna be clear. But when you now move to where you're actually scanning plates just to log them, that's where I get off the ship. I think AI writ large is another tool in the economy. What we cannot allow the tool to do is to now abridge constitutional rights. That's where I am. There's a lot more research, a lot more information that's got to be found on these cameras. I got to tell you, I have real concerns about them. Of course.
It's a great question.
Hi, first off, thank you so much for speaking to us.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about homelessness.
Yes.
So do you have a plan on how you were going to address the rising homeless population, especially as you're driving down here on Federal Highway, Sunrise Boulevard, you see a lot of homeless, and also about mental health?
Well, actually, I'm glad you asked about homelessness, because homelessness at its core is a mental health issue. What we have found, our sheriffs will tell you, you talk to them about this, a lot of the people that are sleeping on our streets, they're actually not seeking to get any help or any care. There are major drug issues, there are major mental health issues, and they're not getting the treatment. I do think it's time for the state to go back to having state mental health facilities where people can actually get the care that they need. And I know that these actually received a ton of bad raps for what was happening in the 50s and the 60s, and it was right to have a bad rap of what was going on. But we just had a technology conversation. With technology today, there is a way where we can actually provide people with the real mental health treatments that they need, so you actually avoid the homelessness that we're seeing. The other problem where this is existing is in our county jails. Half of the population in county jails are actually not criminal offense. They are criminal offense, but it's criminal offense tied to mental health issues or heavy drug abuse. And people are not getting the treatment, they're just being housed in our county jails. It's making our jail populations less safe. It's making our officers who have to deal with it less safe. And it's creating a real problem that really hasn't been addressed. So mental health, we want to really make a major step forward in Florida around addressing these issues. And I believe if you address the mental health issues, you actually help the homelessness issue at the same time. Because at its core, you have somebody, and our heart goes out to them, but what's happened is they have gone down the complete road of desperation and despair, and there is no hope except a needle or a drug. And then they just don't want to get any help at all, and they sleep on our streets, and they need help. And so I think the state has to look at mental health hospitals again. It might be time to revisit that.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. Congressman Donaldson, as mayor of Lauderdale by the Sea, which is just down the road, I wanted to speak a little bit about on the municipality level. Now we have the tax amendment coming up, the Florida property tax. I wanted to ask you about every municipality is affected by this, obviously. We all want to keep our taxes low, make government more efficient, and protect taxpayers. I think our commission does a very good job with that. The commission, at the same time, cities must fund police, fire rescue, infrastructure resiliency. If you're elected governor, what specific reforms would you implement to help municipalities meet those responsibilities without shifting more of the burden to the taxpayer?
Well, let's start with the amendment. The amendment is going to be in front of the voters. It's really up to you, the people of Florida, at this point. If it passes, working with the legislature, will implement the will of the people. I think once you get past that, then the next step is going to be working with local governments as we continue the DOGE and efficiency audits throughout all of Florida. And let me just tell you, it's not just going to be for the municipalities, it's going to be for state agencies as well. Everybody's going to be examined. Everybody's going to be audited. And by the way, those audits are going to be centralized for the people of Florida in one place, so the people of Florida can toggle through and find their municipality, find their county, and also look at any state agency that they want to, and then be able to query that information to understand how the state and how localities spend their money. If the amendment doesn't pass, we're going to use the Tax and Budget Commission to study all taxes and fees in the state of Florida, top to bottom. We want to have a plan for how we modernize Florida's tax system into the future. And for people most people don't know this, so let me explain. When the Florida Constitution was rewritten in 1968, they wrote into it a Tax and Budget Commission that meets once every 20 years. The purpose was to make sure that Florida's taxing system was kind of keeping up with Florida's growth and keeping up with the times. It gets sat next January. The governor gets to make most of the appointments. So what we want to see happen with the Tax and Budget Commission is a full analysis of the tax system overall, and quite frankly, a full analysis of how we do budgeting at the state and local levels to make sure that's more efficient for the people to be able to see it. we want to study a couple things. One, what do we do with the entire tax system overall? How do we modernize it? Two, how do we repeal homestead property taxes and actually find ways for the 140 million tourists that come to Florida every single year for them to pick up some of that tab? Because here's the truth. During spring break, I'm quite sure that the law enforcement capacity in Lauderdale by the Seas or any other municipalities being used by spring breakers, but guess who's paying the bill? Florida homeowners and Florida property owners. If you have somebody that's on vacation and they use our hospital and EMS gets called, guess what? That's us paying the bill as well, homeowners and property owners. So we want to find ways that these tourists are actually paying for some of this as well, since they're using our services while they are in our state. The last one, if we can't repeal homestead fully, we want to provide real relief for seniors on fixed income and working families, try to find ways to get them off the rolls while we make sure local governments have the revenue that they need in order to provide the services that they provide. While that's happening on the tax side, on the budget side, the DOJ audits are going to continue. I believe that the future of great governments are going to be efficient governments that are transparent in how they spend their money, efficient with the resources of the people of their state. Florida, we've led in so many areas, and we're going to lead in this one too.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. You have a chance to make history. And I like what you said concerning purpose. If a man doesn't work, he doesn't eat.
That's right.
I'm Don Wiggins, the president of the independent television network, WDFL. So many times we hear people say, I need a job. I need help with my business. What do you plan to do with the entrepreneurs that want to start a business and the ones that have a business now that are struggling here in Florida?
Well, this is one is a little bit more complex. I mean, first, if you're a small business owner, you're a startup, you're an entrepreneur, I want you to be successful, but half of that is your understanding of the market as the entrepreneur. Is the market ready for your product? Have you cleared all the decks to make your company successful? And now those are the things that we want to make sure people are doing. I think that's important. I think from a state's perspective, like I was saying at the top, first it's how do we make sure our kids are prepared for the future? But in adult education, how do we make sure that you have adults who are getting trained in the next set of skills that they need to either transition a job or go into a small business? A small business owner, the recipe for success is hard. It is not easy. And a lot of small businesses fail for a myriad of reasons where, to be blunt, government has little ability to fix that or guarantee that. Actually, government can't even guarantee it at all. Because for a small business owner, it's can you raise sufficient capital? Do you have the ability to get your product to market? Does the market even want your product? And do you have the wherewithal to continue the operations in those rocky times? My wife, Erica, she's a small business owner. I watched her start up 4.5 years ago, 5 years ago. There were times at night where she's sitting at the computer or sitting at the kitchen table trying to figure out, how am I going to make this happen? How am I going to make that happen? That's what every small business owner goes through. I think from a state's perspective, you know, we do have small business programs in our state. We want those to continue, but I think it's important for people to understand, as a young entrepreneur, as a small business entrepreneur, there are no guarantees. That's why with a small business owner, if the company works, you get the spoils, because nobody else is guaranteeing your success. It's about your willingness to continue to operate and to be honest, to leave no stone left unturned to find any way to make that business operation successful. I think in terms of how the state would work with an entrepreneur, we got to be in much more detail about what the business model actually is, because no two business models are the same. I will tell you very clearly, I don't see a world where the state is going to come in with stipends or grants, because quite frankly, that's a never-ending cycle to the state spending money and taking away resources from other things that are critical for operating a state's budget. And so we can't get into that business. You end up creating a moral hazard, which is not sustainable for the people of Florida. I want every small business owner to be successful. The data's clear, not everyone's going to be successful. But we want to make sure they have every opportunity. I think from a capital standpoint, I'll talk private markets, not government, We want to have a robust capital raising environment in Florida. One of the reasons I talk so much about us being a major financial pillar on the planet is because if capital is in your backyard as a young entrepreneur, as a fledgling entrepreneur, if you can access that capital, you can keep your business alive longer. It's easier now to raise capital for a startup in Florida than it ever has been because we just have so many people who have brought their wealth to our state, and that's a good thing. At the federal level, what I've been working on is raising the threshold of small banks to escape the Dodd-Frank regulatory framework. Right now, it's about $2 billion. I want to see that. My bill would raise it to $25 billion. I think we're in conference to try to get it to $12 billion. What that means, you have more community banks operating in that community. If you're a young entrepreneur or a new startup and you try to go to Bank of America or Citigroup or Wells Fargo, man, you're just a number to them. But if you are a community banker, that's the person you know around the corner. I knew your mother. I know your family. They're willing to take a bet on you because they know your character and what you're capable of. We need a renaissance in community banking in the United States of America. And this is one of the things that Dodd-Frank under President Obama destroyed. It destroyed community banking in the United States. We need a renaissance in community banking. Hopefully we get a deal in Washington where the small bank holding capital thresholds raised to $12 billion, because then you'll get more community banking in more communities, like right here in South Florida. So our small business owners, people trying to find ways to get from 6 months to 6 years, can have access to a capital base that will help them get there. And I think as governor, that's something that I can definitely work on with the congressional delegation and with the people in the presidential administration, so that they realize that having small bank startups are how you get access to capital for small businesses so they can grow and accomplish their dreams.
Hi, Byron.
Hi.
Thank you for being here, first of all. I'm Puerto Rican. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I've been living in Florida for about the past 5 years. I worked on President Trump's campaign as well in the last presidential election cycle.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've experienced in the last year, I recently welcomed my first child as soon as 3 months ago into this world, and she's been a huge blessing. So I really appreciate your whole standpoint on family and everything. But the one thing that I think has been a big issue in Florida is healthcare. Obviously,
Yes.
it's a national issue. I know you've been dealing with it in Congress too. But I guess my question would be, what would you do in your first year as governor to be able to reform it better within the state? Like, I've been getting surprise bills where I normally wouldn't or shouldn't have been getting, right? Like with giving birth to her, for example, I was overbilled by $2,000 by the hospital when really, and they recently refunded it after going, back and forth. So like little things like that. What would you do to be able to improve that experience and just improve healthcare for not just mothers, but also just in general for many people in the state?
Well, listen, I'm glad you asked. This is a major issue. Healthcare obviously is one of those major affordability points. We've come out with several plans. One we call Your Doctor, Your Price. We want every hospital and every physician's office to post the real cash price for the top 20 services that they provide. Now, why is that important? Because price transparency is actually how you stabilize prices. Healthcare is one of the few industries in our country where the pricing system is hidden from the user. In industries where prices are clear to the users and to the purchasers, actually we have price stability. In some respects, prices come down. In healthcare, it's the complete opposite. So we want to have price transparency throughout the entire state of Florida. Second thing we want to see is we want to get rid of surprise billing. I know the legislature's done work on that before. We want to actually get rid of prior authorizations in our state. That's going to be very important. So if you need to go and get something done, you can go get something done. You're not waiting on the insurance company to do it. We also want to break down this in-network, out-of-network mess when it comes to insurance. Because what happens is when a doctor that you trust couldn't negotiate with the insurance company, they end up going out-of-network, raising your costs. We want to break down that barrier in Florida and really be a leader on that in the country. Another big one, I was with Governor Landry of Louisiana. He and I were talking about PBM reform. because the pharmacy benefit managers, if you look at what's actually happening in healthcare, the cost of prescription drugs is rising on people because you have this opaque negotiating system happening in the background. The state of Florida, I believe, and other states, we can actually work together to do real PBM reform, lowering prescription drug prices. The last piece, and this is where it's going to be in a lot more detail and a lot more work. And I don't like think tanks. I like do tanks. Like, give me something tangible that we can get done and let's go do it, right? I've been talking with the CEOs of our hospitals all through Florida, the CEOs of our healthcare systems in Florida, the health insurance systems, excuse me, doctors, nurses, and I've been very candid with them. I say, look, I have ideas of what I want to see happen, and we're going to move forward in Florida. But we're going to sit down and think through how we go through healthcare delivery in the state. We want to think through the way healthcare is actually being dispensed to the people of Florida. And it's not a government takeover thing. I think government taking over is the worst way you could do it. We've already seen government takeover in healthcare in several places. It does not work. The biggest one in the United States is the VA. Go ask our vets why that doesn't work. So I don't want that. But there has to be a better way to design how we deliver healthcare in Florida. And I think that can be a model for the rest of the country. It starts with price transparency. Like, I'm not a healthcare person, I'm an economics person. If I know what the price is, and quite frankly, if the market knows what the price is, then it's very hard for business owners to play games with the prices. But if you don't know what the price is, then guess what? You take the service and the bill shows up later. We have to get out of that game. The other thing that we need in healthcare overall, we have to transition from a sick care system, because it's not a healthcare system, it's a sick care system, into a wellness system. We need to be prioritizing more front-end preventative care models and also helping people be healthy, whether it's food, water that they're drinking, other items that they're ingesting, coupled with making sure that they're getting preventative care earlier on the front end to help prevent a lot of the more acute healthcare items that happen on the back end. But that's going to take some very thoughtful and frank conversations. You're going to see insurance companies and hospitals are going to have vehement disagreements, but like I told them both, we have a problem because the people who use the system and the people who work in the system are both pissed off. They're pissed off. And what that tells me is your system doesn't work. So then we have to sit down and think through critically how we're going to redesign it and transition into a well care system that prioritizes patients and actually has doctors and nurses be able to go to work and not feel that they're being micromanaged or somebody looking over their shoulder every single day to provide care, which is what they were trained to do.
Thank you for sharing your time with us this evening, Congressman Donalds. Earlier, you briefly touched on environmental concerns. My question's in regards to sea level rise and flooding that's affecting southern cities and southern coastal cities in Florida. We see videos of front yards being inundated, cars floating out of driveways, and there's credible studies showing that in 20 to 50 years, sea level rise is going to have devastating consequences to our coastline. So I'm just curious about what your plan is to preserve Florida for generations to come.
So this is an interesting one. The modeling around sea level rise, they've been doing this for about 30 years already. I remember I saw models 20 years ago that basically said that where we're sitting right now is going to be underwater. That obviously didn't happen. But we want to take this seriously. Coastal resiliency we take seriously. We are going to have to re-engage in seawall construction. It takes too long to actually deploy seawalls that can actually protect coastal Miami, coastal Fort Lauderdale, and going up, obviously, the Atlantic coast here. I was touring the manufacturing site for an entrepreneur in North Miami, seawall construction. She was 3D printing the seawalls. Phenomenal company. It looked great. And what they actually did for the environmentalist community, they actually designed features in the wall that would dissipate waves and also would create natural habitat for creatures to be able to live. Like almost 3D printing reefs, coral reefs in there. And that's what they were doing. It was actually quite interesting. These are the type of technologies that we're gonna have to bring in. Another thing Florida's gonna have to think through is rainwater capture. Part of the reason we're seeing flooding when it rains heavy, we don't capture rainwater in our state. We manage floodplains and we dissipate that water. It kind of dovetails a little bit with the data center question about what are we going to do to protect resources. We need to start thinking about rainwater capture. For a state our size, 23.5 million people and growing, we want to make sure that we have the freshwater resources that we need. We're at a minimum, even if we're not using that rainwater directly, we're using it to recharge our aquifers, so it's not just basically flooding up in the street. I think those are kind of the two ways we do it. The third thing really is about having a long-term water resources plan. I've talked with some of the agencies already about this. We want to see a 30-year water plan for Florida. So two of the things we already talked about: seawalls, resiliency, rainwater capture. But what are we doing about recharging our aquifers? How do we maintain conservation lands and farmlands so you can recharge aquifers and also make sure we have the natural filtration cycle that you need for managing your ecology? What the work we're doing in the Everglades right now in Central Everglades Restoration is going to be a part of that work, so that we actually have water flow moving through the state out into Florida Bay to help with the salinity issues in Florida Bay. So there's a lot of work that we have to do. And also we have freshwater lake management in North Florida that we have to do as well. All these things are possible. The question is, can you sequence a strategy to address each one so you can prepare Florida for its future? To be honest, I don't think we're going to be underwater in Miami-Dade or Broward County in 20 years. I don't. What I think about is not being underwater, but do we have the water resources that our people and our industries need? And I believe that's how we plan effectively for the future. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. I hope this was a fruitful conversation, and we'll see you guys next time.
Appreciate you guys.
I'm still hot, knock your shell off. My money stacked fat, plus I can't turn the swell off. The franchise doing big business, I live this, it's automatic.